Live from Run Your Mouth World Headquarters.
First up, trans Lawrence Taylor addresses why her eyeballs can't get along. Next, we speak to representatives from Planned Parenthood about concerns that women abstaining from sex might harm their profit margins. With one doctor saying, people think we work with a broad community, but the reality is our core consumer will be here 3 to 4 times a year. While other executives said not to worry, these sluts won't make it 2 weeks. Next up, we explore the new government program that is children teaching slow adults board games. And lastly, why after 2 failed assassination attempts on Donald Trump, the country is ready to blame Iran.
It's your daily dose of misinformation, pulled from a lightly hemorrhoided asshole. It's today's Run Your Mouth!
People try and tell you what you gotta do. Don't you listen to them unless you think it's true. Follow your heart and your dreams. Follow your heart and your dreams.
What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Run Your Mouth podcast. Are you guys enjoying living back in Trump's America? I don't know about you, but my hair is growing back and my dick's got longer. I've got wearing backwards hat energy once again. I've got that kind of confidence. Things are shaping up, and this is the new studio. We're going to start broadcasting from right outside of Mar-a-Lago and just trying to pick up all that winning energy. I mean, will he start a war with Iran? Might they assassinate him? Might he implement the entire old Bush regime deep state kooks? All those things might happen. But for now, we can enjoy this moment because you know what? Amongst other things, as I age and you keep thinking that everything in life just gets worse, and then you think you just get more annoyed with little things and nothing's ever going to get better, and the things that annoy you only annoy you even more, and then you keep finding new things that annoy you even more, and then you got to add that to the list of things that already annoyed you. A lot of times as you get older, you're like, I used to live a peaceful existence of donuts and it didn't bother my stomach as much. And I got bills to pay and the health insurance, and you think that things just keep getting worse. But then every once in a while, you get a little glimpse of inspiration where you discover things that you didn't even realize you liked. So, for example, I've learned that apparently I have a sexual fetish for college-age women who will dance like Donald Trump. I didn't even realize I could come without touching myself. I've been walking around with an erection for 3 straight days since I've seen these videos hit Twitter of the college-age women doing the stupid little Trump dances. It's inspiring because, I can't be going to a club. I can't be grinding with people. But you get a bunch of people just dancing like Donald Trump. I could pull Donald Trump dance moves. I could snort some Sudafed, hit a disco floor, and pull off some Donald Trump moves. Those are some inspiring times. Anyways, it's a pleasure to have you guys all with us. Welcome back to the Run Your Mouth podcast, and we're going to be ramping up. Porch tour season is over, although I think next week in Austin, I might try and add one. Not in Austin, in San Antonio, and then try and make the rounds, try and get on some podcasts, try and plug the special, which if you haven't checked it out yet, live from the Denver Comedy Garage, not an actual place. We got to get that thing to above 200,000 views. Help the Run Your Mouth cause by sitting at home, creating different YouTube accounts, just clicking on the links, just keep clicking on it, just keep liking it, keep commenting on it. Let's get that thing over 200,000 views so it can stand as a cemented legacy, a little trophy on the wall of something that 200,000 people didn't actually see because we rigged it and we all just kept pressing the button. But, let's get it there. And then the other goal is we got to get Run Your Mouth above 10,000 listeners and episodes. So get out there, start knocking on doors, spreading the Run Your Mouth gospel. If you've never commented, rated, reviews, liked, subscribed, do all the things. Just do all of them. Don't even work today. Just make it a Run Your Mouth day. Eat extra sandwiches, jerk off twice, watch these college-age women who are dancing, but make sure that they're of legal age. Don't be a creep. And subscribe, knock on doors, and spread the Run Your Mouth gospel. And so while we're on the topic, let's get into some news because there's a lot going on. And I also have some guests coming up later in the hour. We'll make it real radio-like. Later in the hour, What do we got? First up, let's talk about these women who, now that Donald Trump is in office, are becoming celibate. I mean, do you guys believe that the sluts that couldn't live without abortions are now going to give up sex on account of Donald Trump being in office? When it comes to killing babies, you don't tell me that I can't have my precious sex. It's my body, my choice, and nobody's going to make decisions for me. But if Donald Trump is going to rule over me and perhaps limit the amount of sex that I could have, shouldn't you guys be going the other way and trying to have as many abortions as you can? Wouldn't that make more sense? Why not try and overrun the system with the amount of Planned Parenthoods that are available? I mean, that would make for the better protest, right? But listen, I hope that all these women, I hope that they protest. I hope that they all shave their heads. They start looking like me. Maybe they grow themselves a patchy beard, start getting back into working out, putting on their butch bodies. I hope they, there's nothing better than a crazy lady just letting you know that they're completely insane and removing themselves from the dating pool. Please do us that favor. And it's not going to happen because Donald Trump's just going to print all the money, maybe start trade wars. But we're riding the good Donald Trump waves right now. We're standing outside of Mar-a-Lago. We've got the sun beating down on our face. We've got wearing backwards hat energy. We are feeling the vibes of Donald Trump. And so while we are, let's envision that the economy gets so good that all these conservative men out there, they start wifing up the non-crazy bitches. And then all these women that swear off sex on account of Donald Trump, they just get angrier and angrier. They stay home more and more. And then it gets so bad at some point, half of them have to transition into being men just so that someone can marry the rest of them. That's what I'm hoping for. At this point, let's just try and anger the Democrats as much as we possibly can. I do love this archetype of lady that will hit the internet. They hit the internet just to let you know how upset they are. And that's why more women need to be heard. That clearly we need to be making more decisions for everybody else because I don't even think men could get this upset. And let me sit in this car and demonstrate to you just how upset I am. And that's why we need to listen to more women and let them make more decisions because look at how upset and disturbed and emotional I am right now. What a compelling argument for why we need more women running the country is your dramatic display of upsetness. I am so upset that we can't be making more decisions for everybody. I didn't even think men could get this emotional. And that's why we need to be lording above you guys and having our opportunity to make the decisions for all of you. Anyways, I'm wondering how soon this movement just turns into from Half-Baked. You guys remember that moment with Brian when he quits the job and he goes, "So who's coming with me, man? Who's coming with me?" And then that one lady goes, "I'll come with you." And he goes, "Cool, are you like my girlfriend now?" And she's like, "No, I'm like a lesbian." But I wonder how many of these psycho bitches on Twitter are going to be like, "Who's coming with me?" And then they keep watching all these college-age ladies having a party, getting wifed up, just doing the Trump dances at their weddings. And then they realize, oh, I'm just all alone being a psycho bitch on this corner of the internet. And truthfully, I already said it. They should be protesting by seeing how many abortions they could have. Or have they not watched a single teenage movie? Not having sex is not how you get back at people. You got to sleep with people's friends and husbands. I don't want to be putting bad ideas out into the wild. But I'm just saying, if you're really trying to create a stink over here, what you need to do is get on the internet and go, I'm going to find you in your little bar. I'm going to walk up. I'm going to say, "Hey, what are we drinking?" I'm going to laugh at all your jokes and pretend like you're interesting. I'm going to have you cheat on your wife and get pregnant in the back of your car, and then I'm going to come back with the child. That would be more threatening. That would be more threatening than, hey, I'm going to go back to my own corner of the internet and be a crazy person and yell over Twitter. That's not much of a threat. Hey, I'm going to come into your little town and ruin your life because I'm better looking than your current wife, and then I'm going to get pregnant and ruin everything that's ever happened, and you're going to pray that abortion's legal. That would be an interesting threat. And, before I could even put this out into the world, what do you know? There's already psycho bitches coming out with that claim. And that one makes more sense. I'm just saying, if you're going to be a crazy person and make threats of how you're going to ruin people's lives in protest of Donald Trump being here, this is the better play. Here we go. I don't know why that rewinded, but do you hear how demonic her deep voice is? Maybe you got to become demonic if you want to have that good, raspy, back of the voice. Like, I guess if I want to sound more like a man, I got to somehow invite a demon into my life so that I could sound, you know what I mean? The psychoticness, it really does create a back of the throat. You guys can't hear it? Come on, I've got all the settings worked out. I kicked the producer off the show. I told him no more making adjustments to the sound. I tell him we do the show, and there's no reason why. All right, hold on. Let's try it again so that you guys can hear it. Tell me if you can hear it now. I think you're going to be able to hear it. You guys tell me. Can you hear that? You guys still can't hear that? You still? Jeez, my God. All right. Let's try and make a quick adjustment here. Let's not waste too much time on this, because I got a whole show going. Here, let's try this now. Tell me, can you guys hear this? We're gonna have to start doing a pre-show stream just to check the sound. Are you guys just messing with me when you say that there is no sound? Let's try it once more. And then we'll move on. I don't think I have that many videos that I'm playing, so we can get by without it. I think this Niffin guy is the one person who's messing with me, who just keeps saying no audio, no audio. All right, whatever. It's a lady telling us that that she's going to be sleeping with people. Let's just try one more setting. Let's try one more setting for good measure. It should be coming through on the headphones, and that should be the end of it. But we can try this. That might be the solve, even though I don't think so. There's no way that's working. I officially want to throw Niffin off the show for just repeating no. All right, moving on. You can take my word for it. You got a crazy lady threatening to leave her husband because her husband voted Republican, and then tracking down all of his liberal friends for a freebie to not just end a marriage over, Kamala Harris. Can you imagine being that married to Kamala Harris that you would leave your... I mean, that couldn't have been that good of a marriage. All right, next topic, and then let's take a couple comments, and I guess we'll be flying through some videos today. Studio improvements coming soon. We're at the end of Porch Store. I'm gonna stay home, and we're gonna start ramping up the episodes. We're gonna do 2 a week public, and then 1 private that will be paywalled. Wade Mosher, this is the funnest part of the show. No sound, not for me. I take the time to put it together, and it's kind of annoying, lining up all the videos to then not play them. Derek Young. Watching on an iPhone. What kind of equipment have I got to check? Your own equipment? I don't know. Maybe masturbate while you're there? There is no sound, but a lot of wage gets it across just fine. All right. And let's go. We'll take one more. Everything's just people telling me that there's no sound. Yes, I'm aware of that. Brian Berblinger. I missed the notification. I'm running behind, so I kindly request that you pause until I catch up. There you go. The sound issues were brought to you special for Brian Berblinger, so that he would have an opportunity to catch up with the live. All right, next topic. Let's talk about how Kamala Harris managed to spend $1 billion losing. I mean, that's a pretty impressive amount of money to spend to then not win something. Can you imagine spending $1 billion for a loss? I mean, listen, maybe it wasn't a loss. Maybe she's in cahoots with all these marketing companies. She was passing them off some fat checks, and then she'll get some consulting job down the line where they're just stashing it into a bank account for her, and they're trying to fleece the donors for as much as they can, and paying some overpriced marketing bills to some companies that somehow gets filtered back to Kamala Harris. God bless the system where the bigger that you can lie to people, and the more because, dude, I work in marketing, and the amount of budgets that people give us and bust our balls to make sure that every single penny as a result, that some of these marketing agencies are just getting these giant $12 to $15 million checks to go spend some money on some influencers with zero metrics for results and obviously not winning the election. I mean, you could have spent $100,000 with me and I could have just told you, hey, this lady can't win because she can't speak. And we could have gone from there. And that could have sold that. I could have saved the Democratic Party $999 million. You know what? You guys could have, I guess you could have given me $1 million and I could have sold you the rest of that budget just letting you know, hey, this lady's too stupid to possibly ever win. I could have done that for you. I'm a nice person. I could have saved you all of that money if you just spend $1 million with me for me to just tell you, hey, this is never going to work and you guys are a bunch of idiots. But here you have Kamala Harris. You know, our country, it's running massive budget deficits. We're headed for, in my opinion, economic collapse at some point. Hold on to those Bitcoins, but also kind of sell 90,000, above 90,000. You tell me that doesn't get a little bit attractive? And then you start playing that game where you're like, listen, maybe I'll take some profits. Be like, that doesn't make any sense. If I think it's coming back down, maybe I should cash out entirely, wait for it to come back to 60, and then buy back in. And then all of a sudden, 60 starts looking cheap. Do you guys remember when 60 was looking like, oh man, I can't touch this thing at 60. I'll wait for it to be at 30. Anyways, no reason for the Bitcoin tangents. We're going to talk about what you guys should be doing with your money later in the podcast. But let's talk about Kamala Harris not just spending $1 billion on the shortest election campaign ever, not winning, not making any traction, but apparently she didn't just spend $1 billion. She's also $20 million in debt. And talking about not knowing how to budget. How do you not just even cap your spending to the election you're not going to win at $1 billion that you actually go over by another $20 million? How do you even do that? And then, oh yeah, I could have ran this country, no problem. I understand that that this thing's big and I don't have any ideas, but we'll follow the law and I don't really have anything else to say about the policies that I might enact. But not only did she lose, she spent $1 billion losing, and somehow they have to come up with another $20 million. And not just that, but the Democratic Party is so furious right now because not only did they lose, they lost the House, they lost the Senate, they lost the presidency. They literally, we kicked these people out. We said, no more of this stupid horse shit. We'll take a Bush regime change and Donald Trump. Just no more of this stupidity. You guys already put up the guy with dementia and pretended like he was fine for 4 years. I can't do another 4 years of mushmouth and pretending like this is actually a human being. So people, they threw him on out. And now, but this is what's great. You fleeced your donors. You were calling them. You were hitting the phones. You had your best salespeople calling them up and saying, no, this is a tight race. It's just the margin of error. We actually have intel that says that we're going to win this thing. We just need a little bit more of your money so that we can spend it on ad campaigns and make sure that Kamala Harris actually wins. And all these people that they're spending money, it's twofold. For some of them, you know, they really fear that Donald Trump's going to take away their rights to abortions, and that's why now they're shutting down the sex department, shaving their heads, getting on the internet and saying that they're going celibate, or going the other way and saying, I kicked my husband out of the house because he voted for Donald Trump, and now I'm going to go sleep with all of his liberal friends. Which I guess that's, you're giving back something to the liberal community as they mourn. Maybe that will be the play. All these bitchy men going to bars wearing sweaters going, I'm just so upset that a woman wasn't in. And then you get some lady who goes, my fucking dirtbag husband just voted for Donald Trump. And then you end up with that lousy pretending to be a feminist cock. But anyways, listen, we're getting very distracted here as we're just trying to talk about the $1 billion that Kamala Harris didn't just blow, but the additional $20 million that she spent. And there's some embarrassing expenditures there. All these celebrity endorsements, apparently that will cost you a pretty penny. All these people that you try, firstly, people that have nothing to do with government policy, nothing to do with politics, just people that like Julia Roberts is overpaid at this point. Does she even have any celebrity cachet? When was the last time she was in a good movie and looked anything other than like a horse? That lady's just looks progressively more like a horse as her career continues to go on. And then as she gets older, we're trying to pretend like she was ever fantastic. And then the movies, they make less and less money. And then all of a sudden you get to the point in your career where all you can do is take a paycheck from Kamala Harris to pretend like you're endorsing the Democratic machine. And with a lot of these people, you don't even really need to pay them because they were at some P. Diddy party. You got tapes on these people. All right, so anyways, she spent $1 billion. Now it's getting embarrassing because we're finding out that a lot of these celebrity endorsements, a lot of these people showing up, giving concerts so that they could fill the arenas, that was all paid action. And then, of course, you've got Oprah, apparently got paid $1 million, claiming she didn't get paid any money. She's out on a walk, which, she does not look good off camera. Even post Ozempic Oprah, they can doll her up for a camera, but you catch her when she's trying to take 4 steps outside of her car and pretending like she likes to exercise. Ooh, not a pretty looking lady, but claiming, I didn't make any of that money, except that it's on the expenditure reports. $1 million to Oprah, $100,000 for a call her daddy said instead of just showing up and filming it wherever. Lady does not understand how podcasts work. You throw up a green screen, you claim you're at Mar-a-Lago. You got no one cares. You can have it's the authenticity of having a dumb producer who changes your settings every single time you walk away from your computer so that the sound doesn't play. That's the kind of things that you can do in the more authentic setting of podcasts. You don't have to spend $100,000 on a set. And like I said, you could have spent that with me, and I could have saved the Democratic Party the other $1 billion by just letting them know, hey, this is going nowhere. All right. What do I got coming up next? Before I do, why don't we plug one of our loyal sponsors of the Run Your Mouth podcast, SheathUnderwear.com. Guys, the holiday season is coming up. If you've got relatives in your life, you've got old relatives, old uncles, you've got dads, you got people with nuts flapping and hanging all over the place. You can tell that some of your relatives, they got bad vibes. They had a rough year. Some of their businesses didn't go well. Some of them were actually Kamala Harris supporters. Some of them were upset about Donald Trump getting back into office. Some of them were concerned that suddenly we're blaming Iran and putting all these deep state kooks into office who love Israel and seem to want to, get us out of the Russia war so we got more resources for the Iranian war. You've got relatives that are all over the map on Thanksgiving, and they're going to be plowing themselves full with turkey, trying to eat away that stress. The least that you can do is help them have better protected nuts and less sweat and less friction between their thighs. Because success in life, it starts from the balls up. And if you go to sheathunderwear.com, you can have the greatest underwear that's ever graced the balls of man. Use promo code RYM. You get yourself 20% off. Sheath.com, loyal sponsor of the Run Your Mouth podcast. Is anyone still listening to the show? Because I feel like the comment section was out of control. I got 362 people listening, but no comments coming in at the moment. Maybe I could be talking to myself. These things can happen. All right. This is from the New York Times, and they were talking about what Kamala Harris might be able to do in retirement. I can tell you what she can't do. It's a speaking tour. You're going to send Kamala Harris out there with even less to say? Can you imagine her and Joe Biden out doing a speaker tour? What do you even call that? Teleprompters live in concert? You get the like they do dueling to pianos. You can put Kamala Harris against Joe Biden for who can read less and have more of a mush mouth. Competing mush mouths with nothing to say. So, the New York Times is starting to write up what Kamala Harris might be able to do now that she's leaving office, now that she's coming to the end of her vice presidency. And amidst the things that they recommended for her, it was she could practice self-care and go for a hike. The sexism of even the New York Times, where they're like, maybe take care of yourself a little bit. Maybe get off the wine. Maybe spend some time with those nieces and nephews and pretend like you don't regret having kids. Maybe spend some more time with that Dougie guy that you like. Maybe reflect on the fact that you don't really talk all that well for a person who never should have been running for president. Maybe take a little time for yourself and go for a walk and just take it all in. All right. Next up, we've got, I'm going to guess a video, which we're not going to play. But this was Joe Biden addressing the country about Donald Trump taking office. They're letting everyone know that they are the bigger men than Donald Trump is. They're not going to claim that they won the election, even though they didn't. They're going to engage in a peaceful transfer of power. And Joe Biden made this statement, which I liked, is that even when you lose, you have to love your country. And isn't there just something really obnoxious about that? So for all the women out there whose bodies will now be ruled by this dictator, remember that Joe Biden told you that you still have a duty to love your country. I mean, sure, you should be upset and you should protest and you should figure out how we don't have to live underneath this evil dictator again. But remember, even if this man's an evil dictator and you're going to be overruled by men who won't let you have your abortions or the rights to your body or whatever other nonsense. You still have a duty to love the country, to thank the country, to go, you know what, country? Even though you're everything I hate, I love you for it. Next up, we've got all right, let's take another second and maybe I might even just start a new stream because I do have because then I got to do the whole editing and post. Well, I can just tell you. I'll play the video. You guys won't be able to hear it, but I can tell you what happened. You had this lady who basically looks like that dude from 28 Days Later. You know, that actor, the dad guy. Looks like, she just came down from a stint of working as the hunchback from Notre Dame. And she's on the news talking about how she had to confront her child, her small child. I think the child was 6 or 7 years old, who was crying to her mom that now that Donald Trump's in office, what am I going to do if I'm raped and I can't get an abortion? And she's on the news stirring up sympathy that her small child has to live in a world now where she's afraid of both being raped and unable to get an abortion. Firstly, if your child looks anything like you, I think she'll be safe. And also, I think you're lying. I don't think your child said this to you. And if your child did say this to you, that's a reflection of your own poor parenting, that you have a child with these kind of insane concerns on their mind. Your child shouldn't have a concern that they're going to be raped. Your child shouldn't be concerned that if they are, they shouldn't be aware of these things. And if they are, that's probably because you're instilling psychotic fears into your own children. Which brings me to two very important points. One, I was saying I think the news is going to stop being ridiculous. They're going to stop throwing a temper tantrum. It's going to stop feeling like you just turned into some like Jerry Springer style, like almost satire of what the news should be. It's like the news used to be cartoonishly panicked. And you see moments like this, and it's almost like like satirizing what the news was from the 90s of like the way that they would try and provoke panic. By now you're watching the horror version movie of the news. It's almost like at the beginning of Running Man when they have like those fake reality shows, and you got the guy who's just trying to climb for money while the dogs are eating at him. And that was kind of a satire of, what reality TV was. When you watch the news now, it feels like you're watching someone satirize the old panic that the news used to try and instigate. So, two things. One is, I think the news will probably just become less relevant, but I might be wrong about their ability to pivot away from the temper tantrum and complete stupidity because maybe they're just too committed to it. Two is, if you're out there and you've got a relative who takes the news a little bit too seriously, I don't know, we need some sort of an intervention for these people. How many people do you know who didn't leave their house, didn't see a loved one, didn't see a relative, stayed in some small apartment, wore a mask, and thought that they were going to die if they lived and if they continued to live their lives because of COVID? And not only that, but they thought that all of us who weren't listening to them were evil people who were going to get people killed, and that the reason why the country couldn't move on from COVID was because we were outside enjoying our lives when what we needed was everyone to stay home to slow the curve, and then, just ongoing, you have to stay home for whatever reason. At what point do these people wake up to the fact that if you are taking the news literally, you are going to be living a worse lifestyle, and it's self-imposed, and there is no religion that is actually going to reward you a slot in heaven for having watched the news and taken it seriously? You're just a sucker. And it's a problem because it's the mental fallacy of following yourself in line, where you've already indoctrinated yourself, and as you continue to listen to this and implement it into your life and pretend like it's reality, it gets harder and harder to actually sell out of the stock. It gets harder and harder to go, wow, I gave up 5 years of my life listening to these people who are lying to me and just provoking panic and making my life worse and telling me things that would never exist in reality. And it just gets harder and harder to do. I don't know. I feel bad for these individuals. And I do think we need some sort of a news intervention for anyone that still watches this and for some reason thinks that can you imagine that you thought Donald Trump was a Russian asset for 2 years, then you thought that COVID was going to kill you, then you thought that that Kamala Harris was going to win then you thought that Biden didn't have dementia. You thought Kamala Harris was going to win in a landslide and that it was all organic enthusiasm. At what point do you finally go, hey, I don't think these people have this information right? Their entire business is supposed to be bringing you actual information. At what point is it repeatedly wrong to the extent that you just go, oh, maybe I don't need to listen to this? All right, let's skip this one. Dude, the amount of fucking time I spend collecting things just to comment on it to then not be able to play it on the fucking show. All right, well, here we got Jimmy Kimmel, who is crying over the fact that Donald Trump got elected. And does that make you think he did something at a P. Diddy party? Is he actually that upset about what is going on in this country? Does he care that much? And does he think that Donald Trump is that much worse? Or is this guy really invested in the Democratic machine that for some reason he thinks he's going to be in a lot of trouble unless he's got a better in with the people in the position of power? How can you be an adult who's actually crying? I mean, if Kamala Harris won, I wouldn't be crying. I'd be getting excited to crack more jokes that we have the world's biggest idiot running our country. I mean, I would be excited. I would be like, I cannot believe this has happened, but hopefully the economics collapse is coming under this lady's watch, and hopefully we don't have to go to war, and hopefully there's enough other leverage that they don't censor me off the internet, and hopefully she doesn't make everything so expensive that everyone has to riot and start eating their neighbors, which that was an old, I stole that one from Alex Jones. But anyways, the point I'm trying to say is if Kamala Harris had won, I'd be like, oh, there's going to be some, I'm sick of doing a Donald Trump impression. It's not fun anymore. Who knew? But the levels of dysfunction that we might have had if Kamala Harris got into office, I wouldn't be crying. I'd be excited. When you see this guy actually on his own television show crying, I mean, who cries in front? What kind of a man cries in front of other people? It's not a funeral. I mean, makes you feel like some people are going to start going down. I don't want to get too excited, but I'm just saying that's an odd reaction. And now here, talk about inspiring stories of the elites finally have it coming for them. Raygun retires from competitive breaking after Olympic backlash. And so everybody always remember that we do actually get to these people. A lot of times you think you're just shit posting on Twitter. You think you're just sharing articles and you think there's no point. But no, we get to these people. We really do bother them. Even during COVID, we were undermining their message, and they were like, shit, we were hoping to get everyone vaccinated, and we were hoping to have vaccine passports so we could track these people at all times. Just know, every single time that you share an article and you call these people out on their stupid horseshit, they could pretend like they don't care. They could pretend like they don't mind. They could pretend like they don't see you. They could pretend like they have all the political capital and that they're just laughing. But just know, enough pokes. We're bothering these people. At some point, it gets to them. At some point, they turn around and they go, all right, yeah, I am an idiot, and the entire world mocked me because I looked like an idiot. I don't even know which. Oh, Donald Trump, my prediction for this time around is I do think he's going to do a better job wielding political power than the last time. I think the last time he was a little bit sheepish. Like, for example, when his attorney general recused himself from the investigating of the Russia storyline. I think even during the COVID, even once he got to the COVID stuff, I think his instincts were, hey, let's go to work and let's continue working. But there was so much panic. He was like, oh, all right. He kind of folded to the news on that one. I feel like there were a couple instances where he didn't quite realize, hey, they're going to scream, yell, shout, call me a bigot, call me a liar, call me a deep state agent. They're going to do all these things no matter what. And I think now he's learned what I need is people that are loyal to my agenda, and we're just going to do it. And so in this video, he started talking about how he was basically going to be banning any sort of procedures for transgendering kids. They're going to get rid of the puberty blockers, and that they're going to go after doctors who try and implement those policies. And a lot of this stuff actually comes down to government money. Like I was reading this book once about how basically Obama changed the healthcare laws where if you were offering hormone treatment, whether it was for bodybuilders or just testosterone for individuals, and you were a doctor and you thought that this would be very foolish to give to people who are trying to change into another gender, particularly children, I guess you could lose licenses because it would be considered discriminatory to not give that care to those other people. And so to have a president actually step in and change the laws about what healthcare has to be covered and whether or not you could be prosecuted for doing something that, maybe we all think is actually harmful to kids, it does seem like it seems like a positive change, and it seems like Donald Trump is willing to use a more forceful hand in terms of actually pushing his agenda. And so with that, let's take a look at some of his most recent picks, which includes some nonsense, and it includes some things that seem somewhat promising. Before we do, let's thank our other sponsor for today, Yokratom.com, home of the $6 kilo, and the only place on the entire internet where you can get an entire kilo of kratom for just $60. So, of course, you've got Iranian plotted to kill Trump, DOJ says, and in terms of storylines that I don't like, it does seem to me that Donald Trump has gone very pro-Israel. He's basically called up Fox News with some of his picks, and he said, "Get me attractive-looking people who love the state of Israel. That's all I want. You got anyone good-looking who loves Israel? Then give him a job. And also that fat Huckabee guy, he can have a job. Who else loves Israel? Jobs for everybody." And then of the bullshit that we watched Donald Trump dodge a bullet on live television in what was obviously a security misstep and seemed like some child that had been recruited by the FBI. And then you get that guy who went over to Ukraine, somehow had nuclear materials at some point in time, and then comes back and he sets up at the fence 2 failed attempts, and then we turn around and go, oh, Iran is trying to kill the guy. Conveniently, the people that Israel's trying to have a war with, that's who we're going to blame for these 2 assassination attempts. We're not going to look at the deep state. We're not going to look at the security failures. What we're going to do is we're going to take this opportunity and we're going to blame Iran. All right, and so here's a couple of the picks. You've got the dog killer because, if we're going to be tough on China, you got to let them know that we'll kill our pets too. And then you got this handsome guy from Fox News, which I'm telling you, he's picking up a lot of loyalists and pretty people. Just give me some pretty people who have said nice things about me on television. That's about the depth of Donald Trump as he staffs it. Is who did I last see on Fox News that was attractive? I think there's a good chance that the press secretary will end up being this discount feistier Miley Cyrus, the lawyer who was in the New York case, which she's feisty. That could be fun. And, of course, we've got the Elon Musk and Vivek Ramaswamy will lead new Department of Government Efficiency in Trump administration, which I could see that one going either way. Firstly, does Elon Musk have to give up his job in order to also go work at government? And then also, Elon Musk is a defense contractor, and he could be the defense contractor who restored free speech to the internet because he realized that, he prefers free speech or that works better for him. But yet he is a part of this winning coalition, and it does seem like some of his wealth has been established because of government contracts. So, I'm not entirely on board with Elon did us a big favor with Twitter. Other than that, I'm not sure that he's not a different side of the military, deep state contracting, carbon credits, and whatnots. But Vivek has a job in the administration, apparently along Elon Musk, which is to roll back the size of government. And this one's a little bit like the RFK Jr. placement, which could lead to something great. Maybe we want to actually confront the real cost of inflation, which is all the food supply being chemical bullshit that will kill you, and that we're actually paying for it with socialized medicine and with dying younger and with diseases or other stuff. Maybe we want to confront that. Maybe he actually goes after all of these pharmaceutical companies for the vaccines. Maybe he gets the fluoride out of the water. Maybe RFK Jr. actually does clean it up. And this one's interesting when it comes to RFK Jr. And I'm not saying, you got to realize, take a step back for some nuanced thought here for a second, because like neither character in this story is necessarily good or bad because of the role that they're playing. And so let me explain. You've got Monsanto, which creates this chemical, the Roundup, which is going on all the plants. Now, Roundup could, and very well could be, a horrible, horrific product that causes cancer and raises the cost of having more nutritious and actually beneficial, healthy foods. It could be. Or, and I believe that to be true. Or it could have actually been a product that has some side effects in some individuals, but actually allows us to get a lot more food out of the ground, allows us not to have bugs, and is overwhelmingly beneficial to society, that there's a cheaper and better pesticide option, which is Roundup, brought to you by Monsanto. Then you've got RFK Jr., who is a person who sues these large corporations for the chemicals that they put into the food supply. Now, a guy who's suing corporations could be very beneficial because the products could actually be bad and causing more harm than good. They could be getting away with bad things. And so you get this guy who's coming in, and so he's extracting wealth from them, and he's making a cut, and he's giving some money to the victims. Or it could also be that that guy's a troll type character where the Monsanto product is actually good, and then you get this guy who's very good at lawyering and bringing them into court and showcasing a couple victims and extracting a lot of wealth, or even removing a product from the market that was otherwise good. So take a step back. I know nothing about Monsanto. I remember reading about books a while ago, and I would venture to guess that Roundup is probably bad for you, and in that case, RFK Jr. was probably good for you. The point I'm trying to make is RFK Jr.'s entire career does have a profit incentive as well. Profit incentives they're not necessarily inherently good or bad. But what I'm saying is all these new individuals who are part of this winning coalition and now working with Donald Trump, some of their interests might align better with ours, but some of it might just be the same old game of, getting into government because it's a better way of securing your own profits. So this one, somewhat promising, same as RFK Jr. Maybe he actually cleans up our food supply a little bit. Maybe he sticks it to the pharmaceutical companies, and maybe Vivek and Elon Musk actually come into government and roll back the size and scope of our government and reduce some of the government spending. Or maybe those are just titles that all these people have in the new administration until they realize they weren't able to do anything and return to the private market. One of the worst picks that have been floated is Trump's expected to name Marco Rubio as Secretary of State. That does seem to me like if a deal was cut for Donald Trump being able to be in office and for them to not assassinate him, maybe he was the deep state kook that he agreed to having within his administration. Or maybe Donald Trump is really just picking up all the loyalists who have gotten out there and kissed his ass on television, and Marco Rubio fell into the category of establishment people that have been kissing his ass. And he said, you know what? You're the biggest establishment person that's kissed my ass the best. Here's a job for you. And then the last one is Officer Hardass, which is, listen, I'm not a Trump's a Nazi guy. I'm not this regime is a bunch of Nazi guys. But sometimes you see a dude and you're like, this guy could have been a Nazi. This guy is following orders. You give me the orders. I don't care how evil they are. You need some old soldier who's going to be Officer Hardass, and I don't care what the inhumane orders are. I get my thrills in life out of being the one person that will follow any order no matter how inhumane it is. That's the personality of this guy, which I guess if you give him good orders, then you're like, man, this guy's the best dude. He's the kind of guy that, like, let's say if you owned properties and you needed a person who could evict a guy from a building on Christmas, he would get a thrill out of evicting a guy on Christmas. Where he's like, well, that's part of the system, is that if you don't pay your bill, you got to get thrown out of your house. And so I'm going to be the guy who rolls up Christmas morning and throws you out of your house. And he gets the thrill out of the fact that he's the hard ass who can actually implement regardless of the effect that might have on people. Once again, I'm neutral on this. I'm not even saying that that's not a bad role in society. You need people like this. I'm just telling you that that's who that character is. And so, Officer Hardass coming in on immigration. I've already said it. Immigration, I can fix this thing. It's the Robert Bernstein 2025 amnesty plan, where basically you start going after the most, you weaponize the FBI just to get rid of all these violent criminals. As you're rounding people up, you start throwing people out of the country unless they've self-registered. And the self-registry is basically that you're going to pay taxes, your children aren't going to be citizens, and you're not allowed government benefits until you've been paying into the system for 10 years. And I feel like that would be the most humane way to do it, because I don't think that actually throwing all these people out of the country is even beneficial for our economy. I think a lot of these jobs that they're working are actually better for all of us. And I think I don't think it's going to look good on the news either if they start rounding up people that have actually successfully integrated into society. And then last pick, which once again, it's, hey, who's been on Fox News saying nice things about me? I don't know if you guys remember John Ratcliffe, but he was actually one of the best voices in congressional hearings when they had weaponized the FBI into going after Donald Trump over the full fake Russia collusion stuff. He then left Congress and took a job at Truth Social, and now Donald Trump has given him the job as a CIA director. He has to actually be confirmed, but apparently he has an intelligence background. But the one thing I'm seeing from Donald Trump is that at least he seems to be wielding power better and politicking better, where I think he's looking to implement as many loyalists as he can, so that he can actually enact more of his agenda, which sadly will include recklessly spending as much money as he can. And also, it seems like a tough on China stance, which who knows, maybe he wins that one. Maybe the tariff thing is 4D chess and he gets good concessions on not taking our intellectual property. And then there's the whole Iran stuff, which hopefully we can dodge a war over there. All right, and now, before we move on, thank you to Yokratom, thank you to Sheath. Check out my comedy special and some potential Porch tour dates coming at you. And now, we've got a OG member of the Porch tribe, the only person who followed the initial summer Porch tour, which was all of 3 shows, and I think you were at 2 of 3 of them. Let's welcome Professor Matt as the meter turns to the Run Your Mouth podcast. It's nice to see you, bud.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Robbie.
Absolutely. And talk about throwing down the gauntlet to the other Porch Tour hosts of stepping up their Porch Tour game. The whiskey spread that you threw out on Summer Porch Tour this past year, where I was a real animal. I was a bit of a jerk, where you were doing a nice taste testing. You had the vertical thing, and I was just like, no, I'm just drinking all of this. And got like hammered within 10 minutes on some of the most delicious whistle pigs, which was quite a stash. I got to get back down your way just for some more whistle pig. That was epic.
No, absolutely. I've actually been building that collection for a while, and the way I'm able to justify purchasing those bottles is I'm like, I know Robbie would love this. So
there you go.
Totally worth
well,
it.
I did love it. I think you had the entire run of like the 12-year-old whistle pig rye whiskeys. You had the bag of pretzels ready to go so that you could cleanse your palate in between, and that was a great time.
Yeah, no, that was awesome. Yeah, that was excellent.
All right, so let's get into, because there's a couple things that are top of mind as Donald Trump takes office. I am concerned. There's always just the backstory line, which I've stopped talking about, which is my fears of the market with all the money that's flooded into the system with quantitative easing and when we're going to see a pullback. But I see one of the more positive storylines of Donald Trump is a pro-energy stance, and that we definitely saw with Biden. He killed off the Keystone Pipeline. They were slow on doing the contracts for the offshore drilling. They tried to ramp up the green energy nonsense, which I'm sure was all just wasted money. And then they signaled to a lot of companies that basically we were not going to be a pro-energy environment, which I think withheld investment from refineries and just other energy stuff. What I see as a big potential growth storyline is just basically a more favorable energy climate. And what I'm also seeing from an investment opportunity seems to me to be the biggest growth sector is this, what's going to be a high demand for electricity for these data centers and the possible move to nuclear with the small modular nuclear reactors. So this is actually your area of expertise. So I hand it to you. If you could, let's start with firstly, what you anticipate from the changing regulation of Donald Trump coming in, and if there might be some sort of like at least a positive impact on our economy of more robust energy or an investment and just not this stupid windmill horseshit.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I was doing some research. This is, of course, a fluid situation. The Trump picks, most of these aren't officially announced yet, but he has floated a number of names for the various cabinet positions: National Climate Advisor, Interior Secretary, EPA Director, the FERC Chair and FERC Commissioners. That's the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission, the Department of Energy, the Nuclear Regulatory Commissions. These are all very important agencies that play a role in whether or not America is going to be successful in achieving energy independence. And for the most part, it seems that he's picking either folks that he had in those positions last time, which, to be fair, give credit where it's due, probably the best improvements in the energy landscape in America in decades. So that's fantastic. He's talking about.
Let's start with
Go
that.
ahead.
What did those guys do well the last time around?
They are good at rolling back some of the more extreme restrictions that the Democrat administrations, Obama and Biden, et cetera, have put in. So, for example, Biden most recently said that, hey, look, if you want to build liquid natural gas export facilities in the US. So these are facilities that can store liquid natural gas. Boats come up, they can fill the boats up with the gas, and then the boats can take them to Europe or wherever they got to go to deliver energy where it's needed. Biden put a freeze on that. And he said, we're not allowed to build any more LNG export facilities, which is not great for the American economy, because that means that's that much less gas that we can export and sell and bring that money in. Stifles the development of gas infrastructure in the US, things like that. Trump's been very vocal, and his picks have been very vocal about getting rid of that. We could also talk about the EPA. So the EPA, basically since Obama, has been ratcheting up the restrictions on carbon emissions, things like that, essentially forcing the retirement of all the coal plants and making it generally more expensive to operate a power plant that runs on some kind of fuel. So what I would love to see is the EPA director and the other picks here focus on getting rid of that, so that we're not prematurely retiring these plants and causing reliability issues in the US where we don't have enough power.
How bad is coal, like, from an environmental standpoint? I know that that people hate. I don't know anything about it, like, in your head, because you actually understand kind of energy infrastructure and energy demands. Is there an amount of coal that we could be using that would make sense because of, like, it could be, the damage could be offset by economic growth, or is it so dirty that it really just makes sense to kind of try and basically, I guess, sell it to China so that, they can pollute over there?
To me, I am very skeptical of the climate catastrophist narrative, right? So you're probably familiar with Alex Epstein. He wrote the great book. His first book was The Moral Case for Fossil Fuels. And then he had a more recent book, which is just absolutely fantastic, called Fossil Future. Highly recommend anyone that cares at all about energy read Fossil Future. He's the narrator of the audiobook. Great book to check out. He breaks it all down. Even burning coal, so it depends how you look at it, right? Like, there's many pollutants that come out of that smokestack. And in terms of the pollutants that actually harm people, the sulfur and the nitrogen, stuff like that creates the smog. Coal is the worst of the power plants, but it is so much better than it used to be, with scrubbing technology and things like that to really clean up the emissions as it comes out of the smokestack. That said, if carbon is your concern, coal is multiple times worse than gas to produce the same amount of energy. But again, it's whether or not you buy into the climate catastrophe narrative that the world is going to end and the ocean's going to rise by feet and, all that kind of stuff. I think Alex Epstein does a really good job of really debunking all of that, going to the actual UN IPCC reports, combing through them and showing that, look, even according to the UN, which the news generally points at, when they're trying to appeal to authority. Even the UN in its own reports is saying, look, it's the likelihood of catastrophic ocean rise is extremely unlikely.
Got it. So what else do you just anticipate from the, I guess, Donald Trump coming in of, like, what else are the expanding energy plays? Like, I always hear that we have so much natural gas in this country. I'm not sure what happened with the Keystone Pipeline being shut down the last time, but that seemed like it was a Warren Buffett railroad play. I'm talking out of my ass. I know nothing about this, but I'm curious. What do you actually see as being like, I guess, like, very expansionary in terms of energy access from a Donald Trump administration?
The phrase Trump uses is all of the above. So he's all about whatever makes sense in terms of just let's build more energy infrastructure. I think he's all about building these pipelines that the Democrat administrations have been doing everything they can to shut down or slow down.
And in your opinion, why is that? Is that they're trying to protect profits for rail? Because
no.
every time someone steps in and goes environmental, you know they're being full of shit.
Yeah, I think. So I used to work in energy policy in the state of New York, and I got to know some of the folks that were, rabid advocates for renewable energy. And I'd talk to them, and ultimately what it would come down to is they would say, look, what we need to do is make the price of energy like 4 times more expensive in the United States. And then once it's 4 times more expensive,
then the windmills make sense.
Then it's going to make sense to build wind and solar. And until then, it's not going to make sense.
Which is economically the most illiterate thing like imaginable.
Absolutely.
It doesn't make sense. It's like if you're talking about everything being 4 times more expensive, and for no reason. Like it could all just be 4 times less expensive. And then we could all have more money to go spend on other things. And that's how you actually have economic growth and development. If you take the, almost, you know what I mean? It's almost like the energy is like the building block for everything else. So if you increase the cost of that, you're going to limit everyone's ability to consume anything or engage in any of the activities that they need to engage in. Like it's such a, it's such a funny thing. It's like, oh, well, if everything was just 4 times more expensive, then the windmill would make sense. Yeah, but everything would be 4 times more expensive. Do you want to live in that world where your hamburger's $100 instead of $20? You prefer that?
It's a shame. And, I think Trump kind of sums it up in his statement of drill, baby, drill, right? So it's like, let's get more gas wells online. Let's drill for more oil. Let's build these refineries. Let's do what we should be doing to make energy affordable and basically make the economy. That'll be one of the staples of trying to make the economy turn around.
All right. So now let's talk a little bit investment opportunity here. So I'm already reading, firstly, it seems like on some of the small modular nuclear reactors, like Bill Gates and some other private players have their hands in it, and you can't make the easy investments. And I've already heard chatter of them trying to reopen 3 Mile Island, which I think is the old nuclear power plant by New York, where essentially these large tech companies like Amazon, Microsoft, and Google are trying to essentially buy these old defunct nuclear power plants and reactivate them with none of the energy going to the grid, but all the energy going to basically fuel these data centers. So I just look at this and I'm like, all right, we messed up for the last 3 years where we had a bad regulatory environment for energy expansion. Even if the data centers in the whole AI world did not exist, I don't think we're looking at less energy demand. And now we've got this new technology, which, until the robots take over and we try and blow up the sun and then they got to turn us into batteries. We're looking at an increased energy demand. Who is the people out there that don't care about the green energy? Who are like the Donald Trumps in the energy environment, the drill baby, didn't waste their money? Like if you were to tell me, hey, there was a car company that just said, fuck it on the EV mandates, didn't spend any of the money trying to reinvest into that field, did not squander that opportunity and just said, we're going to make the combustion engine better, I'd be like, that's where I want to invest. Who are these players in the energy space that are just going big, that are actually going to be the people that come through with the technology and resources that are fueling these data centers? How do I get in? I see what the elites are up to. I talked about the higher carbon reducing trees scam. I talked about urban windmills. I talked about jarring your farts. I had some great scams for the Biden administration. Nobody called me up and said, hey, I'd like to invest in this and let's get it off the ground. So now how can I do some passive investing into this energy boom to, what's the next Bitcoin here?
I'm not exactly sure. In terms of the companies that are building, gas plants and things like that, they're the same companies that are trying to build the nuke plants as well, General Electric, et cetera. It's kind of all the same players, right? In terms of vehicle manufacturers, they're looking at what we call like the CAFE standards, which is essentially a standard for the number of miles per gallon that the fleet of vehicles that you sell as a manufacturer has to average. And that gets ratcheted up every year. And eventually, sometime in the next few years, probably by 2030, something like that, that number is going to be so high that if vehicle manufacturers want to sell vehicles in the United States, they're going to be forced to produce electric cars. And so what you see are companies
or
like
buy
BMW.
Credits from Elon Musk.
That still wouldn't offset that wouldn't allow you to achieve the CAFE standard MPG target, mile per gallon target.
Oh, I thought you were able to, because I remember for a while, like some of these companies were selling these sedans at a loss. They were shitty cars, but they were doing it just so that they could hit like their average fuel economy standards.
No, that's exactly it, right? Because the average, you do some kind of equation, the average fuel economy of an electric car is like hundreds of miles per gallon. So for every one electric car you sell, you kind of bring up your average. And so what they do is they heavily subsidize the electric cars so that people will actually buy them, bringing up the average MPG of the cars that they're selling, allowing them to sell gas cars that they actually make money on.
I've got a good scam. You ready for this scam?
Let's do it.
Okay. How do I just create essentially a golf cart that's an electric golf cart? I sell it to people for all of $500. You make sure that it gets 600 miles to the gallon. Maybe even throw a little gas tank in there, like an engine that would go on your lawnmower. You just got to get it labeled as technically a car. And then we sell the fuck out of these things just so that people can offset their other cars. That's where the scam's going to be. It's just, what do I have to make to create these fake fucking carbon credits so I can sell it to somebody else?
To qualify as a car, it's got to be built to a certain standard. So have you seen those three-wheeled, like, what do they call them, slingshot vehicles?
Yeah.
The reason actually why they're building those is because that doesn't qualify as a car.
Oh, so then it doesn't have the fuel standards. I want to go the other way. Here's what we do. We take people's retired clunks of shit, and instead of throwing them into, trash pinning them, we pull out the engines and we put in some hunk of EV garbage that can get you to your grocery store and back. We'll call them unreliable piece of shits. That will be the company name. But they'll get 100 miles to the gallon, and people can start offsetting some of their carbon or whatever the fuck else they have to offset. It's a great world where a government legislation can allow you to come to market with a big old piece of shit that just, the carbon credits scam corp of America rolling out hunks of piece of shit. I would love to be able to get up in front of Wall Street and make the presentation with the big, maybe I should do the sketch, the big old hunks of shit.
Yeah, the issue again is with just the federal standards for what is a car and all the safety equipment and cameras and sensors and all that stuff that you need built into it now. General Electric actually makes a car that they sell in China. Small, super affordable car. You can buy it for a few $1,000s, gets like 60 miles to the gallon. It's not electric, it's just gas. But it's not loaded with all of the features that the federal government requires, so they can't sell it here in the US.
Is that like the cool looking Toyota truck that's like 13 grand or whatever?
Yeah. No, it's a little car. It's a little passenger car is what I'm thinking of.
All right, so tell me about, firstly, let's just go back to the data centers. What's in play there? Because I guess, listen, if we want to be competitive in the world, and I'm not taking a pro Google or a pro collecting everyone's data stance, but AI is here, and we're going to need massive amounts of electricity to power it. And obviously, we don't want to be having rolling blackouts and basically, I don't need my energy cost to go up tenfold because Google's building a data center down the street, and now the energy demand in my area has gone up, as if there's an entire another city here. So I guess, what are you kind of forecasting in terms of energy needs within the country? And does that point to you that, like, we're definitely going nuclear? And how do you think we get there?
So, the timing of this conversation is just perfect because so much has happened just within the last couple of weeks on this. So, interesting, maybe what I want to start out with is there's this nuclear plant in Pennsylvania called the Susquehanna Nuclear Plant, owned by this company, Talon Energy. They've been operating forever. And Amazon is trying to build a data center there. So Talon sold off some of the campus so they could build the data center. And they signed what's known as a power purchase agreement for 300 megawatts. So the plant is generating, several hundred megawatts. And 300 of those is now allocated specifically just for the data center.
And can you, just to give that to me, like in human terms, 300 megawatts, is that enough energy for a city for a day? Or is that a village worth of electricity?
A megawatt is like roughly 1,000 homes.
Okay.
So this would be like 300,000 homes worth of power,
and
something like that.
Austin, how many people live in Austin?
Well, to give you an example, New York City, I think their average consumption is like, 13,000 megawatts for whatever, close to 10 million people. Something like that.
So you're talking about 20% of New York City's electricity.
About 300 megawatts out of 13,000. So it's more like 3%.
Yeah, there you go. Bad at math.
Yeah. So that was fine. That deal went through. And then Amazon said, hey, look, I actually want to build a bigger data center. So instead of 300, could you give me 480 megawatts of power from this plant? Plant was happy to do it. They started entering into an agreement, which needs to get approved by the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission and FERC. And FERC said, no, you're not allowed to do this because that's too much power that you're removing from the power grid. And we're worried about reliability. So if you were to go through with this deal, we would have to upgrade the grid to bring more power in from somewhere else. That cost gets passed on to customers. And so we're not going to let you do that. And that was just like a week or so ago. So
it's fascinating because I'm just saying, if I was playing the global domination game, like if I was Canada right now, I would go, you know what? We've got vast empty land that's very cold. Let's put nuclear power plants in all these places and we'll build you areas for your data centers. I'm almost surprised that countries aren't going massively pro-nuclear. Like France has a lot of nuclear energy. I'm surprised they haven't done that. I know that Japan, I think, makes use of nuclear energy, but I guess they're a smaller island. Maybe they don't have as much real estate available for data centers. But China, they certainly the pretty big landmass. Russia, I'm just surprised that with the what's always interested me about the small modular nuclear technology is that the government uses it. They have it on the submarines. Clearly it works. For all the things that we've heard about carbon in the universe and the way that technology is supposed to be getting better, we basically, other than the military, haven't really developed or used nuclear technology over the last 30 years. But the government's got it figured out. They have it on their submarines, so they have it. So it seems to me like we could have abundant electricity. It's almost like, you ever watch Venture Brothers?
No.
Venture Brothers, it's one of the greatest comedies of all time. And then in the last season of the show, it took a weird turn in that I'm sorry, listen, the show's been out there forever and it's highly watchable even if you watch the entire thing. But there was this cartoonish relationship between the Guild of Calamitous Intent, which was basically the villains, and then the OSI, which was like the government, super agent secret squad. And at the last season, essentially, this guy who was a failure his whole life invents portal technology, and he realizes he's going to be rich. And then we find out that the OSI represents basically the global interests of the world, and they take away the technology because they're like, you're going to cut into all of our profits. Nuclear technology almost feels that way to me in a way, where it's like your oil, your natural gas, your coals, and all of your other stuff are like, yeah, we don't want this other thing that can just give you electricity.
Mm-hmm. No, you're absolutely right. Yeah, there's, this is perfect. This is exactly where I want to go with the discussion. Could I take one step back and just talk about what's happening right now in Azerbaijan with the United Nations Climate Change Conference? So this is COP29, the 29th conference they've had. And here, all the countries of the world are getting together and making pledges with regard to climate, things like that. So just yesterday, to demonstrate the United States' commitment towards this effort, the White House released its framework for expanding U.S. nuclear energy. And I spent last night going through this and just trying to dig up everything I possibly can to see whether or not this commitment seems possible. And we're going to get into why on the nuclear subs, that's perfectly fine. We can have nuke plants, all that stuff works great and has for many decades. But for some reason, when it comes to civilian power, we just can't get it done. And it's totally artificial. So the White House is saying, all right, look, the framework for nuclear energy going forward in the US, we're going to build big reactors, the traditional ones that you see with the cooling towers, that kind of thing. We're going to build the small modular reactors. We're going to build micro reactors that are just a few megawatts. And we're going to do things like any existing plants that we're going to try to expand them. We're going to extend their life. Any that have retired, we're going to try to restart them. And they're going to do things like workforce and supply chain improvements and stuff like that. So I looked through what their plan actually is. And really the big picture for nuclear power and whether or not that can be achieved is that in the US, it's prohibitively expensive to build a nuke plant. And so essentially what we're trying to do right now is milk the existing nuclear fleet for everything we can get out of it. We're subsidizing the heck out of it to keep it running because it's not really economical given the low cost of gas. We were talking about coal earlier. Before the EPA really stepped in and started trying to regulate it out of existence, most coal plants retired because energy got so cheap due to gas, the abundant gas that we have in the US, that it was just retiring on its own. And the coal plants that are left need to be there for reliability purposes, for fuel diversity purposes. Famously, when Texas had their blackout in 2021, Oklahoma was fine because they had coal, right? So the gas pipelines all froze up. That pile of coal that you have sitting there outside the plant is there available for you. It doesn't need to flow through a pipeline. It's right there on site. Shovel it into the plant. You're making energy. They didn't have a blackout. Texas did. One positive thing for coal, or at least for fuel diversity generally. So the White House is painting this rosy picture that, hey, we're going to develop all this nuclear infrastructure. But the reality is grim. I think it's way overly optimistic, at least given the current environment. Hopefully Trump can do something about that. But this is, talk about the deep state, man. Like there are just agencies upon agencies making sure that this doesn't happen affordably.
You know what I see happening? And I don't think it's not necessarily a loss to us because, for example, let's say Google's building a data center and they were just to tap into our current electrical grid. Demand's going to go up. The cost is going to go up for all of us. I envision that there's going to basically be regulatory carve-outs for the billionaires to go and create their data centers, where it's like maybe in a better marketplace, I could get a small modular nuclear reactor and you could be some tech kid and you could figure out how to get your hands on enough electricity to essentially go compete with these guys. And maybe you could even come up with better ways of storing data or, ways to compress whatever those processes are. And so in a way, it's spooky that with the electricity needs, it's not even going to be like an affordability thing of, for example, could I publicly fundraise to the Run Your Mouth fans? Let's open up our own data center. Let's do data scraping and let's go compete with Google. Because what's going to end up happening is Google will essentially get a carve out to get the nuclear technology it needs so that they can use nuclear technology and they can have the data center. But then it will never really be rolled out commercially because they don't actually want that electricity option for the plebs.
I'm more optimistic about it. I think once we start, so I agree with you that I think the data centers are going to be what forces this change. But there's a whole process that you need to go to build SMRs. So I let's jump into that a little bit. So
Hold on one second. I just want to grab my mic stand. Give me.
Yeah.
You can. I'm listening though. You can talk.
Yeah, absolutely. So in terms of SMRs, the very first SMRs became operational just within the last few years in Russia and China. There's a report of inventory of all the SMRs that are being designed around the world that I ran through last night. There's about 80 different designs that various companies are trying to build. And some prototypes in the West could come online later this decade. But in terms of the US, we are probably not going to see operational SMRs until sometime in the 2030s. And so the demand from the data centers might be able to accelerate this to some degree. But that's a very long process to build your design, actually prove that it works and that it's safe, submit that to the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, get them to approve the design, then come up with an actual project where you're going to build the plant in real life. The Nuclear Regulatory Commission then has to approve that. And each one of these approval steps can take years to get through the NRC. So right now, the leading SMR technology in the US is developed by this company, NuScale.
I think I'm invested in them.
Nice.
Am I? Are they public?
I think they're public. I'm not
Were
sure.
Were they an offshoot from General Electric, or is that a different one?
I'm not really sure. I do know that their stock took a big hit about a year ago.
Great. Go buy, everybody. I'm giving Scott ticks now. You're not allowed to legally do that, so I know nothing about anything, but that sounds promising.
Yeah, so NuScale has the first and only SMR design that's been certified by the NRC. So that was certified just last year. They had submitted that design in 2018. And just last year, the design finally got approved by the NRC, just to give you a sense of how long this takes. They're the very first. There will be others, but I don't even know that others have really been submitted yet, certainly haven't been approved yet. So we're talking years before other manufacturers are going to be able to start actually trying to implement these designs in real life.
I think we might be a little bit late to that party. Look at the year that NuScale's having.
Yes. Yeah, that's exactly at the end of 2023. So what happened there was NuScale was planning to build 6 SMRs, like a cluster of 6 SMRs, be about 500 megawatts in Utah in partnership with a national lab.
Where were you in October with this information?
Oh man, I just found out last night, to be honest with you. They didn't even start construction of it. Basically, they were going through the NRC phase to get the design approved. Right around the time that the design was approved, they were looking at, okay, well, let's figure out what this looks like to build. And it was going to cost just some crazy amount. It was going to cost like $9 billion to build a 500 megawatt plant. For reference, a gas plant would cost $500 million of that size, something like that. So you're talking like 20 times more expensive than what a gas plant would run. And so given these ballooning...
And does that become decommissioned before it's profitable? Like, because if you're a gas plant, I got to keep burning through the gas. Whereas I guess if I'm nuclear, I'm running some uranium. I'm going to assume that the operational costs are more in the favor of nuclear once it's actually built. But that by the time it gets decommissioned at 20 times the initial investment cost, that's probably not profitable even over the long run.
No, it's not. They were originally thinking it'd cost about half that, which is still many times more. So originally they were thinking, all right, we can build this thing. It's going to cost about twice as much as we'll be able to earn over the lifetime of this plant. But we'll be able to get enough subsidies from the government that will be able to kind of offset that and hopefully break even.
I guess the promise there is more that the technology, if we actually start using it, will get cheaper, that the second or third generation might actually be cost effective, what I guess becomes disconcerting about that is that if you're talking about your first model's not going live for 5 years at 20 times, at 20 times the rate of what gas is going to cost you, then by the time you get to the more profitable version, for all you know, we figured out nuclear fission or figured out how to get, more out of each gallon of gas, or we figured out how to carbon capture and process that back into electricity. So what you're describing of the SMRs sounds less promising.
Yeah. I mean, average market price of power is like $20 a megawatt hour. Ultimately, once they actually kind of designed this thing, it was going to cost like 90. And so they realized, look, even with the $1 billion in subsidies that we're getting and things like that, there's just no way it's going to be profitable. So they scrapped that. Hence, you saw the dip in the stock price in November of 2023. It's been climbing because now they're looking to build the first SMR plant in the U.S. in Idaho. So the construction permit for that is under review by the NRC now. If all goes well, it'll be approved next year. And then as soon as it's approved, they would start construction, and then they would start operating it in 2029. So it'd be the very first SMR. Of course, not profitable, but with the subsidies, they could hopefully break even, demonstrate the technology, and then you can start to scale, bring the cost down, and then we can actually start moving. But you got to get that.
I'm going to bring our other guest on, and then I'll give it to you, Mr. Matt, to see if you got any closing words. But while we're talking finances, money, shaking and dealing, it's our friend down from Mexico, retired, switched back to his original gender after settling with his HR department. What's up, Mr. Johnny from the Peddling Fiction Podcast? How are you, my friend?
It's all good, man. Thanks for having me on again. It's good to see you.
Absolutely. All right, Matt, anything else you want the Run Your Mouth fans to be aware of in terms of data centers or other Donald Trump shenanigans?
Hopefully we can overcome some of this regulatory gridlock here. Hopefully we can streamline this. That's what Trump is saying is, look, I want to streamline this process. Hopefully he's successful in doing that, and we can start getting these plants online a little bit sooner and a little bit cheaper.
There you go. And why don't you plug for everyone as the meter turns, or where else people can get in touch with you?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter at as the meter turns. Building this course, and hopefully Robbie will have me on sometime next year once I launch it. It's going to be basically Energy 101, trying to make it in bite-sized chunks that's entertaining to the lay person to watch and learn about this stuff, and really excited for that. Robbie, thanks so much for having me on.
Thank you. And now, Mr. Johnny, am I shorting my Bitcoin? Am I buying more Bitcoin? Are we front-running the government that the economic collapse is coming and they're going to have to switch over to the Bitcoin currency, and we're going to be rich for every little sliver that you hold on to? What are we looking at here?
Well, if you are holding crypto, I hope you're taking some profits after this blow off top that we've just had with Trump winning the presidency and the landslide.
Is it just Trump enthusiasm that's juicing some prices? That's all it is?
I really think so.
How enthusiastic can people with crypto be about Trump that we're blowing it through to 90 plus?
Have you ever met any of these Bitcoin pros, dude? They have a fucking wet dream anytime anybody talks about Bitcoin in a positive way, or crypto in general. And Trump has paid some pretty good lip service to the crypto community. He went to one of those Bitcoin conferences, and he says he's going to be more friendly to it from a regulatory standpoint. He's even talked about setting up a strategic reserve. I don't really exactly know how that would work, but yeah, if it's in the news, man, they go crazy. And I think this big move, especially in Doge, started in like South Korea on like Tuesday.
Oh, they're getting excited about Elon Musk.
Yeah. So I mean, who knows how high that can go? But when you get moves like this, and you're seeing it up, 10-20% a day, I would be taking some profits. I actually bought some Doge as like a fucking joke.
There you go.
Back in like a long time ago. It was like 3 cents or something. I just thought it'd be funny. And I took most of my profits when it got about 42 cents the other night. leave a runner on in case, it's crypto. It's crazy. It can go as high as most of these guys are like teenagers too. And they're just, this is their whole investment plan because they've just been stuck in these economies where everything, they're in debt up to their eyeballs. It looks like impossible to buy a house, and they just have no future except holding on to a small portion of Bitcoin or Dogecoin or any of these meme coins and hoping it goes to $1 million. So yeah, there's some hodlers out there. What's that?
Lottery tickets.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
And once again, for everyone listening, wherever you do listen to the show, this is not investment advice.
Absolutely not.
I'm an idiot. Johnny's certainly an idiot. So, take it with a grain of salt. All right. So looking at this Donald Trump 2.0, firstly, Johnny coming out strong and saying, dump those Bitcoins, take profits at the top, wait for it to come back down. And what do you see as reload. What do you see as the new buying point? To me, it was like when it was in the 40 range, is like 60 now kind of the new place to be buying in.
Let's pull up a chart. I saw a nice little pool of liquidity down there, kind of around maybe around 70.
Yeah, I'll pull up the chart. Yeah,
I got it here too. Let's see. Yeah, around like 65, something like that. Oh, here, I have a more detailed chart if you want me to pull that up.
Yeah, I think you can just add it to the screen. Yeah, because we just blew. I mean, I'm talking shop here, like I know what the fuck I'm talking about, but I guess we did blow through this top at 62.70, and now it's like, I mean, that's a blowout right there. But
yeah, we just ripped through it. Here, can you see?
And it's not like anything real changed. You know what I mean? Like that's where you start wondering, like, what changed that it was 69 here and now it's 92?
Well, that's why, I mean, to me, crypto's kind of a crapshoot. It's not really based on anything fundamental as far as I'm concerned. So that's why when you start making all-time highs, I think it's just prudent to take some profits. Yeah, you could leave a position on, maybe just take out your initial investment. So you're playing with house money or something like that, but nothing, even Bitcoin doesn't go up in a straight line. So there will be some pretty violent pullbacks where you can load up again. I don't know if you can see my screen on here. I can show the more detailed part.
Let me just, let's mute it. We'll pull me down and pull you up.
All right. So yeah, if you can see here, like this,
you got the candles and the zoom in. Look at you.
Yeah, well, this is what I do all day. So the one thing I will point out to anybody that's not used to looking at these charts, you can kind of see how like right up here is very smooth. You have all these, we call them relative equal highs here, 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 and here. The markets tend to like to attack those areas. So anytime I see something that's kind of like a very smooth edge here, as opposed to something like this, which is more jagged down here, I look for the market to attack that. And as you can see, after it swept these relative equal lows here with this candlestick, it just ripped higher and it ripped through that. So if I was looking to buy back into it, the first area I would look at is sort of right down here.
Now, for my limited financial background,
yeah,
it seems to me like you could throw some boiler bands on there for tops and bottoms, and we just broke through that top. Isn't that sometimes a sign that things are actually like when it blows past that resistance?
Yeah. The traditional theory is that previous resistance becomes support, and previous support becomes resistance. So yeah, this big red line that I drew up here was the resistance. Right. We blew through it. And so now people would think that that's the floor. I tend to think that these markets are a little more rigged than that. And so the big money, the big institutions, they sort of prey on people following that strategy, which is why I said it attacked this level of resistance. So if this really was resistance, it should have just bounced off it and gone much lower, but you can see that it attacked through it. So yeah, that's why I generally like to look for areas that would be considered by like the dumb money, so to speak, support and resistance and look for it to attack those areas. So yeah, I wouldn't be a buyer up here at like 75. I would look for it to attack the people that are using this area here as support, because chances are if it gets down here, it's going to attack those people so that it can take all of their buy stops there.
All right. So now next up for you is as we come into Donald Trump 2.0, interestingly enough, the Fed has just lowered interest rates. I mean, not by a lot, but they did. A year ago, firstly, you and I were always looking at the government spending and going, hey, this makes no fucking sense. And, quantitative easing still has to wash out of the system. PE ratios make no sense. This whole thing's going balloon up. But I can only say that for so many times over the course of so many years of getting wrong. Last year, you had the inverted Phillips curve or whatever the fuck that thing's supposed to be that always leads to a recession. And this is the first time that it didn't. But now there's like chatter of, well, maybe there's more of a recession going on, and the Biden administration's been kind of cooking the books to pretend otherwise. So as we come into Trump 2.0, just like, what are you expecting kind of like overarching picture for the economy? Do you think, we're going to be in for the Donald Trump energy boom? Do you think we're going to get these big concessions from China? Do you think Ukraine war is going away? We're going to get along with Iran and everything's booming? Or do you think they've been hiding a recession on the books and we might start seeing some big time corrections?
Well, it might be a little bit of a mixed bag there. I'm optimistic that we can put an end to the Ukraine war. Everything else geopolitically, I don't know. But I'm not very, I am fearful that the Trump economy is not going to live up to the hype. We've had a big blow off top here. As soon as he started, it looked like he was going to run away with the election. Like the markets just went crazy. But yeah, the government has absolutely been cooking the books here. I've been covering it a lot on my podcast. Like these job numbers have all been complete bullshit. If the only thing that's been boosting them other than their birth death model that they use is the government employment that they've been hiring all of these people to make it look like we're creating jobs. So I think if they were doing a more honest account of the job economy, what they're the spending that they're doing, where the CPI actually is, if they really accurately calculated that, we would look back on this period and probably realize that we're already in a recession. I think that's one of the reasons why Donald Trump was his campaign was so appealing and he won in such a landslide fashion, is because the economy is not what Biden and Harris were claiming it to be. It's kind of a disaster. We had record high inflation at one point. It's still running. Today we got the CPI numbers, it's running at 3.3% year over year or something like that. So it's still going up. And people are having a lot of trouble paying these types of prices. They're taking on second jobs. So yeah, I think unfortunately it's going to be a pretty rough go of it during the Trump second term here.
And then what's going on with Warren Buffett that he's pulling out of everything? That's been making the news. He's sitting on giant chunks of cash. And as a person who's mostly just taken his money and shoved it under the mattress or in some high yield savings account to make the measly 3 and 4% and missing out on all the market returns, thinking, hey, it's all going to be cheaper. It seems to me like the Fed's only got one play, which is making everything more expensive by printing and making more money available. I would have thought commercial real estate's blowing up, housing market's coming down. I would have thought, I would have thought we'd see more prices coming down. As some of the money left the system, but it just seems to me like they only got one play in the book, which is pumping up the prices and like quit being an idiot and holding your cash.
Yeah, I mean, they do have that old saying, "Don't fight the Fed," and also buy the fucking dip. I don't know if you remember that. Did you ever see that YouTube video? It's from like 2011 or something, and it's like they do this like ridiculous cartoon with like robot voices.
Is that with the bears?
No, it's like two just regular like robot characters or so, like cartoon robot characters.
Right.
And this lady's like, I'm really worried about the economy. And she starts describing all the fundamental problems. And he's just like, just buy the fucking dip, you fucking idiot. Because the Fed will not let this market go down. They will just keep printing money. The alternative to that is to default, like honestly default on our obligations. And I just don't see any politicians with the stomach to do that.
Well, Donald Trump might be the only one dumb enough to do it.
Maybe he is the king
Fuck
of
you,
death.
fight me. We're not paying it. Come and try and take it.
I mean, that's what we should do. Those are the two choices. As far as Warren Buffett's concerned, I mean, the stock market right now is very expensive. It's like ridiculously expensive. So he's a value investor. This is what he does. He's generally a little early when he sells out. So he cashes out when I don't know how exactly his calculations work, but when the market gets a little too rich for him, he takes everything out and then he just waits for a big pullback, which I think we'll probably get at some point. But even a huge decline in the stock market, we'd still be like close to like what
Record
were all-time highs.
Yeah, even if you pull down 40%, you're still at an all-time high. Like,
yeah, we're still above like 20,000. So it's like, on the Dow. So, but yeah, that's typically how he operates. He pulls out a little early, unlike you, and and he just kind of waits on the sideline. So
it's like even if you correct 2024 from 6,000 back to like that's still an all-time high. And
right.
what's that? I just showcased my terribleness with percentages, but how much of a percentage correction is that?
From what to what?
You're basically looking at I would say from currently we're at what 6,000 to about, let's just say 4,500. So that's 1,500 over 6,000 or whatever.
Yeah. That's like a 25% decline.
Yeah, and a 25% decline still keeps you at the
which
all-time high.
Right, which would technically be like a very bear market is a 20% decline there. So yeah, I mean, it would take a massive move for these markets to really go lower in terms of nominal dollars. That's where the inflation comes in. If you were to price it in gold or something like that, it's kind of a different story. So yeah, I mean, I don't know if the stock markets will actually go down nominally very much, but your purchasing power will be beat up pretty bad. And it's hard to find, like you were saying, even if you're being conservative and you're just rolling treasury bills or buying CDs or something like that, you can get 4.5% on a short term CD or something like that.
What are some of the current Johnny plays for preserving your wealth? I see we're talking energy demand is going up. I see some promise, even though I have no idea how to invest in it, but the tiny homes, because I think I just don't understand the technology of homes, that like building is still just expensive, and also it seems to me like your first home buyers that get all excited about affording a home, you get into the home and insurance rates and all the other bullshit's going up on you, so it's just becoming
the insurance rates, which are not captured in the CPI, they've gone up like 40% or something. And
then repair costs can be going up on you, like also your property taxes can be going up on you. It's
especially if you live in Chicago.
It's wild that the entire concept of owning a home is you want the security of like, well, at least I know that I own this, but what do you really own if all of a sudden next year your insurance rates and your property taxes can go up in a way that your home is no longer affordable? That's a scary thought to me.
It is. And I mean, it's the government. They can do whatever they want. My property taxes on my condo in Chicago went up 20% the last year that I was right before I sold it. And some neighborhoods went up 50%.
Yeah, that should be illegal. Like that, just because.
Yeah, it's like, just you owe us an extra $3,000 this quarter.
Right.
In like
no,
60
I
days,
own the house. That's the point of owning it, is that I know that I have a fixed cost of living here that I can afford.
Right.
It's wild.
Break. Your furnace goes, AC goes. If you're in a condo, you can get a special I got a $35,000 special assessment one year. That was my portion of it. Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of things that home ownership, it's not it's not all sunshine and butterflies.
Right.
But I forget where we were going with that.
My question was, so what are the Johnny tips for preserving your wealth?
Okay. So there are, I mean, I do like certain sectors of this economy. I tend to be, because I generate most of my income through investments. I like stocks that pay dividends. There's a lot of different ways that you can generate dividend income on a monthly or quarterly basis. And they've started doing these things. They're called covered call dividend.
You sell the covered calls.
ETFs. So, well, you don't have to do it. So like JP Morgan will have a covered call dividend ETF, and it'll be investing in a certain sector of the economy. So if there's a certain sector that you like, technology or real estate or oil and gas or something like that, they'll have an ETF for it, and they'll manage the selling of the covered calls to generate a premium to pay you a dividend. So it's a relatively new thing. These funds have only been around for a couple of years, but I'm pretty optimistic on some of those. It's a nice way. You can get, a 9-10% dividend, pays monthly.
Can you even just reinvest the dividend if you want to?
Yeah. That's called the drip. You put the drip on the dividend reinvestment.
What are some of the sectors that you like for that?
Some of the big ones that I do have a position in JEPQ, which is it's a NASDAQ premium income dividend ETF. So that's like it tracks the NASDAQ basically as a benchmark, and then it sells those covered calls. It pays a dividend of 9.35%.
You're not concerned about a NASDAQ pullback?
Well, see, that's the thing with the covered calls. You limit your upside and downside. So if the market rips like it just did, the stock barely moves.
Right.
It'll go up like maybe a couple of bucks, but it also helps you on the downside because they're selling those covered calls as well. So it's a little more stable. I am still a little worried about a major pullback, which is why I've sort of started to average into some of those positions, get a little bit started. So you get the dividend income coming in, and you have some dry powder in case you do get that 20% pullback or something. You can start buying things at a discount. So yeah, I generally like to buy stocks that pay you, even if you're buying individual stocks. I like to be paid while I hold them. I've never really been a momentum chasing stock kind of guy. I think I should earn something while I hold it. So those, if you look into some of those, there's an S&P 500 is the SPYI, I think. Some of the other, like some of the big, if you're on any of those discount brokerage things like Schwab or well, I think TD Ameritrade was actually Schwab took it over, but they have their own dividend ETF funds. So if you're not very well versed, like Warren Buffett says, just buy an index fund and hold it. You can kind of do that with dividend paying stocks as well. And you'll earn, I think the Schwab pays maybe, 4 or 5% dividend, something like that. 3.4%, something like that. So, you're earning a little something while you're holding it. And if you do reinvest the dividends, that can compound really quickly. So maybe if you're thinking about doing that, look into, pull up one of those dividend reinvestment calculators, and you can figure out, if you hold this thing for 20 years, what it's going to end up looking like.
Just for the not financially savvy, I'm just going to explain this a little bit to people.
Okay. Yeah.
If you're selling covered calls, what it means is, like, let's just throw out numbers. Let's say I own General Electric, and General Electric stock is at $100. Let's just keep things simple, right? So if I'm selling covered calls, and let's just keep things really simple. Let's just say I sell them out of the money at 110. So if the stock has a huge year and it goes up to $200, I'm not making any of that money because I sell out at 110.
Yes, your covered call would be taken away from you as soon as as soon as it got in the money.
But what's nice is that if a stock, let's say, pays a 4% dividend, and then I'm selling a covered call on top of that, and so let's say I'm making an extra, keep it to the simple $100 at $2 a share or whatever. So I'm making an extra 2%. So you can be making, 6% on your money if the dividend's 4%, and then you're making an additional 2% off the covered call.
Yes.
So it's more of it's almost a way of like turning a stock into a bond. So you're not going to get you're not holding it necessarily for growth of that if the stock has a breakout, you're not going to see those profits, but it is a way of kind of making a fixed percentage on your money.
Right. And if you're the one selling the covered calls, you can exercise it before it gets to your strike price. So if it was at if it went to 109 or something and you didn't want to have to sell your shares, if it gets to 110, you can close out the call position and just collect whatever the premium is at that point. But if you're buying the ETFs or something, like somebody on the JP Morgan desk that's very well versed in this is managing it for you. But yeah, covered calls in general is a pretty underutilized strategy, and it's really not that complicated. You basically want to sell a call that's above the cost price that you're into the stock for.
And also just explain it to people, covered call means that you actually own the underlying asset.
Yeah, you have to own at least 100 shares of the stock. So yeah, the reason why it's called a covered call is because you own the stock that you're selling the call for. Yeah. So
can you even sell naked calls?
I can't. No.
Right.
Yeah, I think you have to be a pretty sophisticated at an institution or something like that. You can do that.
Right.
When you're they have the accredited investor thing that you got to qualify for. Yeah.
I mean, that's such it. You might as well just short the stock. I mean, I guess not quite. You're just looking that it's not going to go up over. Your bet is essentially it's not going up over this amount in this amount of time.
Yeah, and that could end up. That's a lot riskier. It can end up costing you a lot more money there. Yeah. So.
All right. Anything else that you're seeing in the financial markets or predictions for the Donald Trump round 2 that you want to share with the Run Your Mouth fans?
Yeah. Well, I mean, unfortunately, as great as it was to see Donald Trump just wipe the floor with Kamala Harris and company. I just think reality is going to set in here pretty soon. And he inherited a pretty bad economy. And I don't see a lot of ways out of it. As you were saying, the Federal Reserve has been painted into a corner. They can keep cutting rates, but the dollar is just going to go through the floor. We got a nice little rally here in the dollar and the stock market. Like I said, every time you get to all-time highs, it's a good idea to maybe think about taking some profits, fade this move a little bit. I see stagflation on the horizon. So I think eventually the reality is going to set in that we're kind of in a recession now, and inflation is sort of out of control, and they're not really serious about addressing any of these issues. The national debt is just completely out of control. I think it's our second biggest line item now on the budget. It's over $1 trillion just to service the debt. That's it's either tied with Social Security or it's beating it. So there's no talk of addressing that issue. And that debt, a lot of it's short-term debt at lower rates that we have to roll over at higher rates now. So it's just the problem's going to spiral out of control. It's basically we were talking about the housing market before. It's the mother of all adjustable rate mortgages. We have an adjustable rate mortgage on 36 trillion and nobody's talking about the issue. That's how you know it's really bad. The debt ceiling is going to come and Donald Trump's going to raise it, fight to raise it. The Department of Government Efficiency, which is one of the reasons why Doge is going through the roof. it's a cute idea, but at the end of the day, it's not. It has no power. It's not an actual government agency. It's just like it's basically like a think tank or something.
It has as much power as Donald Trump actually wants to implement firing 50% of the federal workforce.
Right.
So
yeah, but they have all these unions that it's going
Right.
to make it tough, and then Congress has to like approve the spent. Like, is Congress really interested in eliminating entire departments? I mean, hopefully we get rid of the Department of Education, like he's saying, but like we'd have to get rid of like dozens of departments just to kind of make this thing put us on a trajectory that isn't completely devastating. And unfortunately, I just don't have a lot of optimism for that. But maybe he can, if he gets in there and he goes Javier Milei on everything, and that becomes sort of like a trendy thing to do, maybe we can turn things around. But yeah, I don't have a lot of faith in the dollar going forward. So yeah, there's another sector play if you want to buy foreign stocks for that, especially that pay you a dividend in another currency, diversify, maybe get some BRICS exposure. I mean, gold has been beaten up pretty badly after Donald Trump got elected, but I think that's sort of a temporary thing. Gold mining stocks also pay dividends usually as well. So, and those are actually pretty cheap compared to where the price of gold is. Silver, I mean, the spread between silver and gold is like enormous. I've never seen anything like that. They're usually kind of at a certain percentage away from each other, but gold's at all-time highs and silver's half of where it was on its way to its all-time high from like 2011 or something. It got up to like $50-$60 and maybe $50 an ounce or something, and it's only at like 30 right now with gold at all-time highs. So I think that spread will close down, and I think silver should go up. But markets can stay irrational longer than you can stay solvent.
There you go. All right, Johnny, why don't you plug where people can find you if they're out on the streets of Mexico, or they can follow your podcast, Peddling Fiction. What else you got for them?
Yeah, Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I'm usually on the beach or something like that, or down by the pool bagging some rays. But I do the Peddling Fiction podcast usually twice a week. Tuesdays and Fridays we go live. It'll either be like around 11:30 Central Time or like 2:30 Central Time. And then I have a Substack as well where I put out extra content. Every once in a while I'll write like an article, or I'll just do another little short rant or a podcast or something like that. It's Peddling Fiction. So that's about it. But it's great coming on, man. Good to see you.
There you go. Pleasure as always. We'll porch again sometime in Mexico. It'll happen.
Oh, hell yeah.
Yeah, just get the granola bars and water so I don't have to have a panic attack for 3 straight days.
Yeah, maybe next year.
All right, let's it was very odd, the comments on my end. We usually take comments throughout the show. But for some reason this one guy's comment got like stuck on the bottom, so the new comments are not coming in on the bottom. But here, let's take I just figured that out. The whole show was trying to figure out what happened to all the comments. I just figured that there was like a bug. All right, Junior, should I invest in guns and ammo instead?
Well, that's it depends on how much you have to invest. But yeah, I mean, if you only have a little bit of money, buying stuff like that, things that aren't going to go bad, that will be useful in certain tumultuous times. Yeah, not a bad play.
All right, Spike coming in saying, I can understand stocks more if you compare them to erection and ejaculations. So covered calls are a little bit like edging. Yeah.
I think we ejaculated last week. Look for a little refractory period coming in.
There you go. Why didn't you just start with that, Johnny? That was much easier to follow. OBSY. Bitcoin will go up as we're seeing, and the debt will be paid off with Bitcoin reserve profit.
I don't know, man. I mean, the government can buy all this Bitcoin. It'll at least give a lot of people that have been holding Bitcoin an opportunity to cash out. But then I think the federal government's just going to be left holding an asset that nobody wants to buy.
All right, here, I like this. You ready? Joe, Why don't you get someone like Guy Swan on to talk about Bitcoin? This guy's an idiot. By the way, I love Guy Swan. And Guy Swan probably has the better strategy for Bitcoin, which is just hold it. But Guy himself will tell you he doesn't actively trade. Johnny actually trades, so you might be long overall Bitcoin, but you're not telling people don't have Bitcoin. You're saying there might be an opportunity to take some profits and risk being able to buy back in at a lower number. So.
Right, and I've never really been a very big crypto guy, admittedly, but I do understand how these charts tend to work. So on a long enough time horizon, buy and hold has obviously been working very well for Bitcoin, but the play for me has always been to trade it on a shorter term basis. There's a lot of volatility that you can take advantage of if you're buying and selling on a shorter time horizon. But yeah, I mean, I'm not claiming to be an expert in crypto.
And once again, no financial advice here. All right, let's take 2 more comments. Is it more beneficial to like and comment on the Run Your Mouth channel or the Robbie the Fire channel? The Robbie the Fire channel, I think there's going to be a time in the future where I disband the Run Your Mouth channel. It's without getting into more details, it's a bit of a relic from the COVID era. And the Robbie the Fire channel is the main channel. And there's a lot more other content beyond Run Your Mouth here. So if you're a fan of the Run Your Mouth podcast and you follow the Run Your Mouth channel only, I would advise to check out the Robbie the Fire channel. It's got my special and other stuff. All right, let's take one more.
Great special, by the way.
Thank you, sir.
Congrats. Yeah.
I need a 10x the numbers. I want to get it to above 200,000. All right, Demon Microwave. Here's the last one. I don't know if Officer Hardass is truly sadistic. I don't think he actually takes pleasure from suffering so much as I think he's got a robot brain. Those are the rules. We're following the rules. The end. That's not that different than what I said. I'm talking about Trump's immigration guy, who's kind of hilarious. I call him Officer Hardass. I'm sure you saw that clip where some lady asked, well, is there a way to deport people without separating families? He's like, sure.
The whole
we can
family.
just deport the family together.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then,
he's had some pretty good moments. He gave it AOC a lot of jazz too.
Yeah, that was great when he goes, well, no, it's this rule that they broke that rule, so it's illegal. That was great. And then he also had one, this one actually makes sense to me, which is if somebody, like, I understand his logic. He goes, if you're, let's say, doing a DUI or hitting your wife, you're going to jail, and I'm not taking your kid to jail with you. If you have a kid there, you're being separated from your kid. He goes, that's what happens when you're enforcing people who are breaking the law. So I somewhat understand his logic, which is if you cross the border illegally, well, I guess we can deport you together. There's like no real reason to separate you from your child. But I do understand where he comes, where he's like, he's like RoboCop, where he's like, the rule is the law was broken, and here's what I do when the law is broken. So he's like, just go write a new law that says that I don't separate them when I'm deporting them, or that this isn't a law to break. But there's something to be said for his attitude, which is, I'm fucking RoboCop. This is the rule that you told me. I'm going to go do the rule.
Yeah. And I mean, it does show that Trump is pretty serious about dealing with the border. Like, he's actually going to do what he said he was going to do, or at least try to, with that kind of appointment, as opposed to some of the other questionable appointments that have already taken place and that they're floating around. But yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense to just like, they have like 2 little kids or something. They have gone to like Child Protective Services or something, and then they send this guy back to fucking Venezuela.
Someone's got to get organs to Nancy Pelosi.
That's true. Yeah. And blood to the Hollywood elites. Yeah.
Exactly. All right, that is our episode. Hold on a minute, Johnny. Thank you, everyone, for hanging out. Once again, Peddling Fiction Podcast. And check out